Welcome back. There you go. We're back recording. Nice to see you all. As I said, we've got a great um, sort of extension of the Transportation Committee lunch session presentations today, which, as I said earlier, I think are an excellent and timely setup for the Megaregion Working Group next year, which SACOG will be chairing. And as I said earlier, we've never, ever seen, I've never seen this much passenger rail investment funding available now at the state level as well as the federal level. And what you don't have to do is say, if only we had some projects, because we've got some projects. And they really, I think, true to the title of this lunch session, potentially unite the mega region, east, west, north, south. Almost all of you have some stake in these projects. So we put the two of them together, which is the Capital Corridor and the East and the San Joaquin rail corridors. It really does connect our region north and south, east and west to the Bay Area, over potentially maybe someday soon over to the top of the hill and over to Nevada. So without further ado, I'm gonna have the Capital Corridor go first. So we got Rob Padgett, who's the managing director. The Capital Corridor JPA. Following Rob, we have Dan Levitt, who is with the ACE and San Joaquin Rail Commission. Two kind of remarkable agencies. I know some of you actually serve on them or know them very well, but agencies that are all about, I think, hustling for attention, for funding, and for really providing excellent service throughout the region. So we're going to start with Rob, and Rob's going to walk through a little bit of the presentation. This is informal as always. So if you have questions as he's going, please don't hesitate to ask. We have until 1 p.m. and take it away, Rob.
Thanks, James. Can you all hear me okay? All right. And I wanted to say thanks for having me. I realize that I have not, other than my own board meetings, I don't know that I've had an opportunity to speak at an event since COVID started. So excited to be here and appreciate the opportunity. Sacramento is one of our most important markets, and we are excited to work with you. As James said, there's lots of opportunity, and I'll talk a little bit about those opportunities going forward. And do we have the slides? Well, they were there.
They were.
And SACOG. SACOG yes. Transportation Committee, sorry. So I'm going to go ahead and start while the slides are coming up. So I do want to, I don't ever want to assume everyone in the room knows much about Capital Corridor, but I'll talk a little bit about what we are as an organization. So we are a joint powers authority. We are responsible for managing the service that runs from Auburn down to San Jose. The highest level of service is really between Sacramento and Oakland, where we run 15 round trips daily, and then south to Oakland we run 7 round trips daily, and that's full service. We did just on October 3rd bring back more service, so we are back now to full service on weekends, and on weekdays we're up to 24 out of 30 trains daily. So we're making progress. We're getting back. Pre-COVID we carried 1.8 million passengers daily, and we're back to about 50% of where we were pre-COVID. And so slow and steady. As we've added more service, we continue to see. Here, let's see if that works. You gonna put it on slideshow? All right. We'll see how much I remembered here. This is the test. All right. In our on-time performance, we've generally been at about 90%, which has been one of the highest performing intercity rail services in the country. We're really challenged this year. We've had a lot of issues with right-of-way safety and grade crossings, and I'll talk a little bit about that because I want folks in the room here and others who might be listening to hear about some of these opportunities so we can partner and try to get some stuff done. So a bit of our governance here, and I do want you to understand the complexity of our service. So the Joint Powers Authority is made up of 6 transit agencies, including in the Sacramento region, Placer, YOLO, and SAC-RT. And we are the only public transportation service that serves all of Northern California. We are operated by Amtrak, so Amtrak engineers drive our trains, conductors are on our trains, they manage the stations, they maintain our equipment. The equipment's owned by the state of California. The right-of-way is owned by Union Pacific, and then we run on a little piece of Caltrain, and they also do the dispatching of our service. Communities own the facilities around the stations. And then the Federal Railroad Administration has oversight, safety oversight over our service. So we bring all this together to run the service and to get stuff done. And I forgot to mention too, we are hosted by BART. So BART and the Capital Corridor boards have an administrative services agreement. And that lets us take advantage of all the strengths that BART brings with procurement and all the legal support, counting, everything else that we need so we can stay nimble and small and get stuff done. So this is the important slide of the deck here, and you need to add a lot of zeros to these numbers here. The bottom corner here, you see 101. That's $101 billion over a 5-year period. This is what was passed in the IIJA, the Federal Transportation Bill. We're talking roughly $20 billion a year in potential funding. This compares to prior to this bill passing, maybe $2, $3, $4 billion a year in intercity rail funding. Most of that intercity rail funding went to fund Amtrak National Network. We really did not have programs like we now have to fund services like ours. We have at Capital Corridor relied almost entirely on state dollars to date. So this is really a new opportunity for us. And we're excited about the ability to leverage state dollars to take advantage of some of these federal programs. So if you look at the top 2 rows here, this is where we're going to target our efforts. The CRISI program, which you will hear that acronym used mostly, Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Program. This is a program that can be used by freight railroads and passenger railroads. This is the kind of program that can fund all sorts of investments. It was appropriated as a one-time appropriation of $5 billion over the next 5 years. In addition to that, as we go through annual budget cycles with Congress, we could add as much as an additional $1 billion a year. Lots of opportunity there. The federal-state partnership for state of good repair, this is only passenger rail. So this is another great place for us to target our efforts. And then the last line here, I want to point out, and I'm going to talk about this. If you see me at other conferences, you'll probably hear me talk about this as well. The grade crossing separation program. This is a new program. A lot of you have probably heard about the Section 130 program, which is a Federal Highway Administration program. Not particularly well funded historically, very little money available in California. This is a completely new program that is funded by the Federal Railroad Administration, advance appropriations of $600 million a year with an additional $500 million a year possible. This is where we want to target our efforts. And as I mentioned, we've been having a really difficult time with on-time performance. Part of the reason for that is we have all sorts of issues with vehicles on tracks. Unfortunately, we have vehicle strikes, we have pedestrian fatalities. What we hope to do is partner with organizations that are interested in addressing these issues and really trying to take care of some of these dangerous grade crossings. And so if you have questions about that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. We'd love to share the details on that program. And because it's outside of Federal Highway Administration, I don't think a lot of states are really ready. So my hope is that a lot of local organizations can move quickly and target this particular program. So out of this effort, what Federal Railroad Administration is trying to do is create a planning process that I think mirrors in some ways what is happening on the transit and highway side. As you're sitting here today, you're doing planning for the Sacramento region. We really haven't been doing that for intercity rail. You have agencies like mine and the state of California, which have been proactive in planning projects. That is not typical in the country. In most cases, states have not been particularly engaged in planning for new rail programs. And so what Federal Railroad Administration is trying to do is seed a lot of new projects. And so if you look at the phases here, phases 1 and phase 2, that's very similar to what we've done at Capitol Corridor or at the state of California. We have a vision plan at Capitol Corridor. Federal Railroad Administration would like to see states and JPAs develop plans that look at the whole corridor, really a service development plan for the whole corridor, and identify places where we want to make capital investments. The opportunity here for federal funding is significant. They have offered a 90% match for federal dollars. One of the things that we're working with the state on is to make sure that we can figure out a way to match that last 10%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but agencies like Capitol Corridor really do not have a lot of dedicated funding. And a lot of the state dollars, as you're aware, are discretionary programs. So we need to figure out a way to take advantage of these federal dollars.
I have a question there.
Sure.
Actually. In terms of, I know there's been a lot of discussion at the state level in terms of the high-speed rail dollars and how the bookends potentially get more funds. And I think there's been some work at. Is there any way to leverage any of those bookend dollars that are going in potentially and in the middle mile, if you will?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're going to have to wait and see the details because FRA will come out with obviously a detailed notice of funding opportunity. And what we'll want to do as those details start to emerge is look for ways to provide that match. One of the things that California's been doing for many years is doing planning on projects. That's not been true for other states. So my hope is that we can say, look, we've spent X million dollars already on this project. We'd like the federal government to pick up the next 80% of the project and really include it as one. So I think there's really a lot of opportunity to do that. And then the other thing I'll say is that the state plan in California is head and shoulders above other state plans. And so I think we're ahead on a lot of these programs. We're going to be able to really take advantage of what's out there and do that before other states are organized.
Thank you.
Sure thing. So here's the list here. The thing that James really teed this up here, and what I hope everybody in the room can take away from this map is that every single project on this map matters to Sacramento. And I know sometimes it's easy to say, hey, let's focus on Sac Roseville because that's in Sacramento, or Davis Station because that's in our metro area. But what you will see here is that all of these projects have the potential to improve the reliability of our service, to improve the speed of our service, and to connect these key economic centers in Northern California. I moved to California about 5 years ago. I was working in the Northeast Corridor. I was on the train, 2-3 times a week between DC, New York, up to Connecticut. And what you see on that service is you have companies with locations in multiple economic centers, and people travel that corridor. It's a really easy way to connect between these economic centers. And I really think the potential, we already have it here in Northern California. I think we're just getting started for regions like Sacramento, the Bay Area, San Jose, Southern California. There's a lot of opportunity here to get people off the highways, but also just increase the attractiveness of the regions. What we saw in Connecticut is a lot of companies in the region were starting to relocate to New Haven. They found that a lot of the younger workers wanted to be on the rail line. They had been in some more suburban locations, and they wanted to do that because they were connected into New York. And I think there's a real opportunity to do that here. So just a couple of projects to point out on this list. I'm going to start from the bottom up. Number 8 and 9, that's down south of Oakland. We have a lot of single track territory south of Oakland, and that presents a real challenge. So if we get out of slot, if we have a train that's a little bit delayed, we very carefully squeeze in, and Dan Levitt, who's going to speak, knows this well. We squeeze a lot of trains into a tight territory there. And so if something gets out of sync, what happens is you see delays up and down the line. So South Bay Connect, we're going to relocate our line through a stretch there. It'll save about 10 to 15 minutes in travel time. But more importantly, it's going to get rid of a lot of conflict that we have. And I think you'll see all of our service improve with an investment like that. I know a lot of you have heard about I hope you've heard about Link 21. We're in partnership with BART in that study. I think this is a game changer. Link 21 is not just a link into San Francisco. That is a project that both justifies and requires lots of other investments to be successful. This could allow Sacramento region to be connected to the peninsula, to San Francisco, very easily. We do that today, but it's not as easy as you'd hope. And I do think that this will also warrant projects like number 5 here, the Carquinez high-level bridge study. So we've just started to look at the possibility of reconstructing that bridge at a higher level so we don't have to lift the bridge and delay our trains. That is the kind of project that I do not think we would have even pondered before the infrastructure package passed. If we can see billions and billions of dollars invested in rail, this is a project that makes a lot of sense and certainly will have lots of benefits for the Sacramento region. I'll mention a couple things in Sacramento. City of Davis, we've already gotten started on a project to reconstruct that station. A lot of you know that we require passengers to cross the tracks. That's not what you want to do. So we are working with Amtrak to redesign that station with a center island platform. We have already started the project. So some of you may have noticed there's a street adjacent to the tracks in Davis that's recently been reconstructed. That project is happening to let us relocate the signal system, which will give us room then to reconstruct the station. So keep your eyes out. We're going to have an event here in early December to talk about that, and then also to talk about next step for the Davis project. And we're excited about that opportunity. Up in Sac-Roseville area, I think a lot of you are familiar with our Sac-Roseville third track project, and I know many of you have also been advocates for that project. We are in the middle of, and I've got a better slide here for that one, phase 1 of that project, which is an 8-mile third track. That investment will give us the rights to run 3 round trips daily. We're just running 1 round trip daily today. I don't have to tell anybody in the room today, that's the fastest growing part of the Sacramento region. This is going to make it much easier for people to connect to our service. You won't have to go all the way to downtown Sacramento. You'll have more than one choice during the day to get there. But we're not going to stop there. Phase 2 of that project, and we already have an agreement with Union Pacific to do this. We'll go to 10 round trips daily to Roseville, and we're working on some projects currently to do some early improvements to get started on that. But we're going to roll right into phase 2 here. And I know James and I have talked about this many times. I think this is the kind of project that is going to really connect those parts of the Sacramento region into the rail network in the state of California. So we're super excited about that project. And I will say, for those of you who have friends in DC, we are right in the middle of preparing a CRISI application. Actually, sorry. For the last line on this table. So I know many of you have been involved in some of the other lines on this table, including the congested corridors and the ITIP contribution here. We need that last sliver of dollars, federal dollars, through the CRISI program. We believe that we have very strong standing. We had endorsements from Representatives McClintock and Matsui when we applied for this previously. There's a lot more funding in this program. So if you have any friends that you want to mention that you're excited about this project, we would encourage you to do that. This is absolutely the time to do that. That deadline for CRISI applications is December 1st, and we hope to hear something, some good news on that in early next year. And we'll invite all of you all to come to that kickoff. All right, with that, I will pause. And are we doing questions at the end, James, or are we going to take them now? All right, take any questions.
This is not just a question, but you started out by talking about the Joint Powers Authority structure of Capitol Corridor, and I want to make a pitch for colleagues here who might serve on one of the transit districts that it's an exciting board to be part of, and the board members are all representatives from these transit districts, so Yolo County Transportation District, RT, et cetera. They each have 2 representatives on that board, and it meets four or 5 times a year, basically. And it's a really exciting operation, now even more than ever. Link 21 itself is worth the time to be involved. And one of the issues that Rob did touch on is the pedestrian and vehicle safety issues at rail crossings and elsewhere along the corridor. That is a major issue for us. There is no other agency that, as one agency that I'm aware of, that has elected officials who are members that represents our whole mega region. So this is an operational way to move mega region projects forward. Now, so I think that having you here today is really exciting for me to see you here. And it is a launch pad for the next time we go to cap, or the next time we're involved in any discussions in the state capital or in the national capital, to know that passenger rail service is a key aspect, a key factor of our regional mobility strategy. And we've got one of the best agencies in the country. And I know that because I chair it.
Appreciate the pitch, and you're right. There's a lot of interest at USDOT in our agency because we have been a real leader, and the board has led that over the last 2 decades with a vision plan that was passed in 2016. That the board had no idea that this huge infrastructure package was coming, but now we have a roadmap to think about what we might actually do. So I've already had a visit from the FRA administrator. The deputy FRA administrator is coming in a couple weeks. They want to see what we're up to. So share Don's sentiment. Good board, lots of good mission there, and we're excited to have you join us.
I have a question on this is technology. I mean, as we look towards the future, I guess what I call post-diesel maybe in trains, electric format. Does that change any of the infrastructure that's being built today as we look towards that into the future? I mean, there's already sort of antiquated technology on HSR in terms of the panel lever, because you can go to batteries for your future. But I'm just wondering how that plays into what you're doing as well.
That's a great question, actually, and very top of mind. We are going to go to zero emission, and we're going to do it faster than any other part of the country. So Amtrak is committed to 2045 to be zero emission. State of California, the date is 2035. There's actually a current draft regulation from CARB that would push that even earlier. Unfortunately, the technology is not there yet. The big debate is battery, catenary, hydrogen. One of the things about a lot of the services in California is they operate on freight railroad right away. So catenary, although catenary actually is the most energy efficient approach, that is probably not on the table for California. But we have been working with some research. The state's been working on some research and partnering and looking for opportunities to really push things like hydrogen and battery. A lot of folks from California went over to Intertrans, which is a big conference, and it's really the only one in the world that's held in Berlin every 2 years to talk about this. And we've actually got some pilots down in Southern California with hydrogen fuel cells. So my gut says that's where we're headed. But if we do go in another direction, you do say have a battery, that would require infrastructure investments. So you're going to need recharging and need to figure out all those details. So we're going to go as quickly as we can, but that's one of the big challenges in the next several years.
Thank you.
All right, do you want to thank Rob? You wanted to come up actually here in person and pitch to you all because there are so many of those projects he mentioned, third track to Roseville, but Sac Valley Station that are really critical, right, in terms of that entire corridor.
Absolutely. And we're doing lots of stuff with Sacramento. It's our busiest station, and Davis is number 2. So I'm in the right place and appreciate the opportunity.
And Rob and I are both going back to the Placer Business Alliance trip to DC in a couple of weeks. We're on a panel, but we're also there. He's a frequent visitor to DC, as you might imagine, because we have to be, right? All of us have to be. So I think that's a really exciting, if you have not ridden the Capitol, I mean, I hope you've ridden it. If you have not ridden it, it is an amazing service. My kids now ride it as teenagers to get down and see their friends in the Bay Area. And so it's lots of college students. So it's a fantastic service. So I want to segue. Thank you, Rob.
Thank
over
you.
to Dan Levitt, who is here. Yeah, applause is good. Applause is absolutely. Thanks for coming in person, Rob. So a couple of things. I've been around the state's high-speed rail project for quite some time. I did some work a very long time ago trying to figure out how to help the cities take advantage of an alignment down the Central Valley that would actually reinforce infill and TOD in places like Fresno. And my sort of maybe not so funny one-liner on high-speed rail is like, we would just be happy with medium-speed rail here, right? All right, so we're just trying to get medium-speed rail. Because but honestly, if we can be competitive with the auto, right? If we can get competitive travel times and reliability to beat going into the Bay Area or dealing with 99, right? We're in business. And I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but your next presenter is going to talk about some like remarkable projects that are a little bit more looking at the kind of service that Rob has up in our region that go north-south and actually connect into Elk Grove, downtown, airport, Plumas Lake, Marysville, Yuba City, Chico. So looking at that kind of a service that Rob currently runs, right, but brand new service. And I'm sure, Dan, you're going to mention getting south. The idea is to actually hook into, to basically meet high-speed rail before it meets us, because it's not meeting us for quite some time. So but if we meet it with service down and can hook into high-speed rail, that I do believe someday will go to LA before it gets here, right? Then we're in business. So Dan Levitt, San Joaquin Rail Commission, Ace Rail, take it away.
Great, thanks, James. And great, you got my slides up, and apologize to not be there in person. We are hiring, and so I have interviews starting at 1, trying to get some people on board to help us with this very ambitious expansion program we have. But I do represent 2 agencies, the San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission and the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority. San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission is the owner-operator of the ACE Rail service, and the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority is a managing agency for the San Joaquins. If you go to the next slide. Just a little bit of background. So the San Joaquins, we're really a sister agency to the Capital Corridor. The state has 3 intercity services, Capital Corridor, San Joaquins, and the Pacific Surfliner. We're the ones shown in orange here. We took over the management of the San Joaquins in 2015. And we are chaired by Councilmember Pat Hume from Elk Grove. We have pre-COVID running 7 round trips, 2 to Sacramento, between Sacramento and Bakersfield, 5 between Oakland and Bakersfield. But you can see on this figure, we also have an extensive throughway bus network that provides additional connectivity to Sacramento and really throughout California. The San Joaquins during the pandemic did pretty well in terms of holding ridership, because for many of our passengers, it's essential transportation. We are currently running 1 fewer round trip between Sacramento and Bakersfield than we were pre-pandemic, but we're carrying about 75% of the passengers that we were carrying pre-pandemic, and that continues to rise. If you go to the next slide. The other service that I represent is the ACE service, which is a commuter rail service that currently runs from Stockton to San Jose. It's been running for over 24 years. Both of these services, like the Capital Corridor, run on freight track. With the ACE service, it's pretty much a peak period service, which focuses in on commuters going from the northern San Joaquin Valley into the Silicon Valley and then bringing them home in the evening, running 4 daily round trips during the weekdays. If you go to the next slide. So what we call the Valley, most of this presentation is really to give you an update on where we are with what we call the Valley Rail program. And this is really a joint program between our 2 services. And so what we're doing here is extending the ACE service up to Sacramento and also extending ACE down to Merced, where, as James mentioned, it will meet up with high-speed rail. But in addition, also adding additional service to the San Joaquins. And we will be sharing a corridor from Stockton to Sacramento. All the dots you see on this figure that are shown in yellow, those are new stations, which are being implemented as part of this program. And over the last 5 years, we've secured about $1.4 billion for this program, most of that being state funds. And we are looking for the first new round trips to begin service by the end of 2024. And so you can see a lot of this expansion program is focused on bringing new service to Sacramento that really connects Sacramento not just to the Valley, but Southern California and the Bay Area as well. If you go to the next slide. This just shows you our alignment coming up to Sacramento from the Valley. And the one that we're going to be, all of our new service will be on the line that's shown in purple and green here. It's a lightly used UP line called the Sacramento Subdivision. The line you see in blue, which is further to the east, that's where the San Joaquins today run the 2 round trips. That's UP's main line, and they weren't interested in additional passenger service on that line. So we worked with UP, and they are allowing this additional frequency of passenger service on this lightly used line, but we do have to do improvements to it. And there is no passenger service on it today, so there's no stations. We need to build new stations. We are looking at implementing 5 stations in the Sacramento region, Elk Grove, City College, Midtown, Old North Sacramento, and Natomas. And we've done the CEQA for the line up to Natomas. We are doing final design on that. We're looking to start construction next year. And again, expecting the first round trip to begin by the end of 2024. Because of the complexities of this, we can't implement all the stations at once in the Sacramento area. So we're looking for day one to have 3 of the stations open. That would be Natomas, Midtown, and Elk Grove. And then by this figure, you can also see that the line that we're going to be running on extends further north as well. And so planning work is already underway, working with a study being led by Butte CAG, which is funded through state funds. And we are partnering with SACOG as well in this effort. But that planning work is underway to really do an extension north that would take this route all the way up to Chico in the future. You go to the next slide. This just shows the routing coming south for the connections to Merced. And this one focuses more on the UP, which is the ACE corridor extension. It's showing green and purple. The green section is the one where we are moving forward with construction next year and looking to start the first round trip from Ceres to the Bay Area. We are focused south of that from Ceres to Merced on getting the additional funding needed to be able to complete. We're having to double track UP all the way from Lathrop down to Merced. And so we're working to get the funding needed to complete the double tracking between Ceres and Merced. And currently we've been working on the piece from Ceres to Turlock, which is the sort of the next step. We have already received some funding for that, and we've applied for the remaining portions of that, which I'll show you in a future slide at the end of this deck. To the east of that UP line is where the San Joaquins run, which is along the BNSF corridor. And we are also working with BNSF to fully double track that line to be allowed for additional passenger service on that line as well. If you go to the next slide. This slide is just kind of showing you what James had mentioned in terms of the connectivity to what high-speed rail is implementing in the valley between Merced and Bakersfield, which they call their early operating segment. Our Valley Rail program, both services, ACE extending down to Merced, and then the San Joaquins basically making a new connection and truncating service at Merced, will have each of these services come together at one multimodal hub station. And then in addition to our rail services, the San Joaquins Thruway buses will also be connecting into the early operating segment for high-speed rail, as shown in this figure. Our agency, the San Joaquins Joint Powers Authority, is expected to be the operating agency even for the high-speed rail portion from Merced to Bakersfield for this early operating segment. You go to the next slide. This just shows a little closer up. The connection at Merced is a little bit tricky because the San Joaquins run on the BNSF line. And so we do need to have a connection that brings the San Joaquins from the BNSF line over to the UP corridor, where they will all meet together, ACE, high-speed rail, and the San Joaquins at one station. We've just begun the environmental work and the preliminary engineering for this effort. Once we complete that, we'll be seeking the fund. We do not have this funded yet. Getting funding for this will be key. This is really an important connection to make the overall program work in terms of connectivity with high-speed rail. To go to the next slide. And then this just shows you sort of statewide how all, in addition to the rail services to the north, how our throughway bus services connect really the high-speed rail segment between Merced and Bakersfield with the rest of the state of California. If you go to the next slide. So what I'm going to do is just kind of walk you through what we're planning between now and 2030. This has to be implemented in phases, working with our partner, with UP and BNSF. Each of the lines shown on this figure, those represent a round trip. And the blue ones are San Joaquin's, and the purple ones are ACE. And this is our sort of baseline pre-COVID service. If you go to the next slide. So by the end of 2024, what we're looking to do is to start a new round trip on ACE from Sirius to San Jose, and then also extending one of our existing services up to Natomas. So it will start from Natomas and then go all the way down to San Jose and then bring passengers back in the evening. This would have, as I mentioned, have the stations at Elk Grove, Midtown, and Natomas. And at Natomas, we will have a shuttle connection to the airport as well. If you go to the next slide. In 2025, we'd be adding 2 more ACE round trips from Sirius coming up to Sacramento. These will be coming during peak periods. In addition to passengers wanting to come to Sacramento, those passengers would also be able to transfer at the new North Lathrop transfer station, which will be implemented by 2025, allowing them to be able to catch ACE trains going down to San Jose. And we'd have 1 additional San Joaquin's train going from Sacramento down to Stockton to connect with one of the Oakland to Bakersfield San Joaquin's trains. Go to the next slide. By the end of 2027, we would extend the ACE service from Sirius down to Turlock. And then in addition, adding 2 additional San Joaquin's trains, 1 from Fresno to Sacramento and 1 from Stockton to Sacramento. And then we add in the City College and the Old North Sacramento stations. Let's go to the next slide. And then sort of the big change when we really need additional capacity for when we're connecting with high-speed rail is 2030, when high-speed rail, by the end of 2030, when high-speed rail is supposed to be running between Merced and Bakersfield, we're looking to connect really with all the high-speed rail trains that will be operating with either a San Joaquin's train or an ACE train. And on the San Joaquin side, on the BNSF, we'd have 12 round trips connecting with high-speed rail, 6 going to the Bay Area and 6 going to Sacramento. On the UP side, we would have 6 round trips, 3 going to the Bay Area and 3 going to Sacramento. So for our connections to Sacramento, by 2030, we're looking at having 12 total. 10 of them would be on the Sacramento subdivision. And then we have our 2 that are still on the Fresno subdivision going to Sac Valley Station. And then this shows as well the planned extension that would just continue for the trains up to Chico as part of this vision for serving the Northern California megaregion by 2030. So if you go to the next slide, just really quickly, a little bit more on this planning effort that's being done. We're pretty excited about it. Going from Natomas to Chico, this is being led by Butte CAG, looking at stations at Chico, at Gridley, Marysville, Yuba City, and then also Plumas Lake. Believing that by 2030, 4 round trips makes sense, but this could be phased in over time. This route, the planning work for this is well underway. We've already gone very far in terms of selecting the routing and the stations. The preference is to take it to Chico. We also have an option that Oroville might be a terminus location if for some reason we can't get agreement with UP to be able to go to Chico, but it's looking very favorable working with UP to enable us to run this line up to Chico on the UP right-of-way. To go to the next slide. The planning work should be completed next year, looking to start environmental the following year. And again, the key here will be getting funding for this program over the next several years. But we think that the ridership work will come out later this year, early next year, apologize. And that will be really key to kind of getting the enthusiasm to move forward with trying to get the funding for this project. If you go to the next slide. Rob mentioned all the opportunities that are out there for grants. I just wanted to highlight a few of the ones that we've gotten recently or that we're going after now. And we greatly appreciate all the support we've received from the Sacramento region, from SACOG, on going after these applications. And Rob was absolutely correct. You guys have been really good about recognizing that even when we have projects that are outside the region, that really these are benefiting Sacramento because they're needed to bring more service to Sacramento. We just recently got a $57 million award on the last TIRSIP round for the extension from ACE to Turlock. There's another big round coming up. We will be absolutely going after additional funding for the program in that next round. We are working with Caltrans jointly on a trade corridor enhancement program grant for $40 million. This would be again to help fund the ACE extension down to Turlock. Caltrans will be submitting that application. We're really pleased that they were willing to do that for us. And that will be submitted on the 18th. If you go to the next slide, we've got 2 federal applications that are currently still under consideration for a mega award. One again is for double tracking to Turlock. The other is for the Madera high-speed rail station. And then we are doing this next round, some planning grants that we're looking to partner with other agencies. One in Kings, Tulare, and Fresno counties for transloading development around the future high-speed rail station, as well as planning for their future Cross Valley Rail, which would serve both Kings and Tulare counties. It was mentioned earlier in your meeting about the application for the old North Sacramento Station area. That particular project we're really excited about. I've got a figure that I can show you in a minute, but that we think is really important to the future of that station to try to get enthusiasm for development around the station and additional infrastructure. And if you go to the next slide, this shows you that area that we're looking at. It's a historically disadvantaged part of Sacramento, and we believe that doing planning will really help sort of get enthusiasm for that station area and hopefully bring additional funds to that area. And James, those are all the slides I have.
All right, well, I had to step out, but I know there's some people in this room very happy to see Plumas Lake and Marysville on the map, literally on the map. So, questions?
You stole my thunder there. Not really any questions, just excitement, just lots of excitement. I'm thrilled about the North Valley Rail extension, and I'm especially thrilled about the studying of a station in Plumas Lake and the excitement over that and the potential for maybe some transit-oriented development there. We've got a lot that a parcel there that I think is just going to work great for that station owned by the county. And so there's a lot of potential there, and I'm super excited about it. So thank you.
Thank you. No, we're excited about that too. We think there's a lot of potential there, and we're pretty confident when the ridership work comes out, it'll show that. But we think that looks like a winner.
And ditto that from Marysville. Really excited. Just a quick question though on timing. Is 2030 the best we're going to be able to do? Because I'm getting older by the minute here.
Yeah, I'm with you. We're showing for 2030 is really having the 4 round trips, and so I think that it'll be implemented in phases. So getting a couple of round trips first in advance of that would certainly be the goal. So that we're saying 2030 for the 4, but I think we need to try to do better and get a couple of those in before that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Keep our hopes up, and we're very excited about the project.
We really look forward to working with you on it.
Darren, soon.
Hey, I'm going to jump on Dan and Gary's bandwagon here, and Dan Levitt, also just put my plug in for Marysville. I just did that commute yesterday afternoon, so I appreciate that. So I look forward
at this regionalism happening. Look at the regionalism. You got Elk Grove advocating for Marysville. I never thought I'd see the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, both actually. I just wanted to tag on that in addition to obviously Elk Grove, as you know. Dan, I've been excited about that. Can't wait to see that rail station open.
Thank you for all your support, and we're moving. Elk Grove, as you know, is a little behind a couple of the other stations. We've caught up. We're moving very well on that, and look forward to getting that implemented.
Yeah, that obviously not your fault. I mean, we had to make a site selection switch there, so no worries. Thank you so much.
I think we have a very good location for that.
Great.
Other questions for Dan? I was saying just earlier, go back to the Salt Lake trip with the board that we did in June and riding the front runner. So many of you got to do that and ride the front runner rail and get off the train and get on the bus rapid transit that have the dedicated lane, right? Like we can achieve those things. That I think all of these things it's not a moonshot. Like we could actually get those here because of these kinds of projects. And my final plug is, I'm going to be a broken record, but Rob and I are going back to DC in a couple of weeks. Obviously, there's the big cap to cap trip, but you do not win, this. You don't win federal funding by one big trip every year. You win it by repetitive communication, going to DC multiple times, inviting our members of Congress and our state legislators here, right, at the right moments, with the right setup. I think the stories around both these corridors are fantastic. And we're exactly the kind of region that should be poised, right, to tell the story. When I went to cap last April, and we had all the stuff we were advocating for, and we had the Megaregion projects and the dozen, we unfolded that thing. The conversation just stopped and stuck on, wait, you're working across your regional boundaries with other partners? You don't have to do that. And, no, we don't have to do that, but we know that's the key to our success. It got a lot of play back in DC, and that says to me that there's a great message here for you all and your chambers and your local businesses and all the folks, right, as you're going back to DC, to make sure this is integrated into your materials and your messages so that it's relentless in the next 12 to 18 months.
No, I'll just add as well as, I mean, you brought it up, James, earlier, like we even want this medium high-speed rail. Well, ACE is our high-speed rail. I mean, the reality is we don't know when HSR is going to operate. We don't know who would even operate it at a loss because of what the cost will be based on the proposition. So I've had a sort of a front row seat to this. Dan, I know you've probably talked to Danny Curtin a lot from the Carpenters when he was on the high-speed rail, and he's my colleague. So we've had a lot of frustration over HSR over the years, but this is a real big opportunity for the greater Sacramento region and for the mega region. We have to do everything we can to make this successful. And I think this will just pay huge dividends for us. And, ACE to me is the key to all of this. So Dan, thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And I apologize, but we got to go try to get some help to help us implement these big projects. Take care, everyone.
I guess we're about out of time, but one of the things that is really critical is that we have conversations like this where Capital Corridor, ACE, the San Joaquins, and other passenger rail providers from around the state, the country, come together and we talk about integration of the modes. So if Rob and I, on different occasions in the past few months, visited Switzerland and moved around the country with ease. With the same app on your phone, you can go everywhere, from up a ski lift to from city to city to in light rail or bus inside the cities. It's really pretty incredible. And we've got, would you mention just in 2 minutes the approach that's underway to get us moving in that direction where you can use one app to move around?
Yeah, so the other big project, which I failed to mention, is the CAL-ITP, California Integrated Travel Program. And some of you may have heard of this. This is the open loop payment, but it's also a trip planning strategy for the state of California. And it's very much like that awesome system in Switzerland where you really can just pull it out and you know where you are and you know when the next train's coming. And we're going to start a pilot. Our current target date is February 1st. We might have to push it back a month or so for Capital Corridor, and you can sign up for that. But what you'll be able to do is just tap your credit card or your phone or your Apple Watch onto a reader, tap on and tap off. Maybe you're going to jump onto SAC-RT. SAC-RT is already a part of that program. And then we partnered with this region for a TIRCIP grant that actually did provide funding for all the transit agencies in the region to get those readers so that people can start to do that. The technology out there right now is pretty amazing. And what we want to do is make it piece of cake to transfer from one system to another so that you don't have to know who the operator is and what kind of fare payment system you have to use. You're just gonna tap whatever your preferred payment method is.
The experience for riders to the point where they can then just move about the country.
And if I could, I wanted to just say, James, the reaching out to your staffers too from the Hill, I have found, I moved here from DC. The folks in California are so excited to do it. I just had a staffer call me up who was in town for a week, and I went and showed them, where one of our projects is, and they were really excited about rail. That's has all the buzz right now in DC. So I would second that comment.
You know that when you're back in DC and you see a member of Congress, but you have a staffer, you say, oh, that's fantastic. We have the staffer because they really do run the show. So to Rob's point, like those connections, if you can't get the member, are super important, developing the relationships, telling the story. So, all right, well, we are at time. I want to thank our presenters. I know Dan had to leave. Thank you, Rob, for coming up here in person. Great setup to next year's Megaregion Working Group effort. Thank you.
All right, buddy.